Don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment. Your feedback is incredibly important to us as we continue to offer you exclusive and captivating content. In the hushed and solemn atmosphere of Aarhus City Hall, the cultural and historical capital of Denmark, an extraordinary reception took place. A prestigious event that marked the symbolic kickoff of the Danish Presidency of the Council of the European Union for the next 6 months. Under the high vaults of this emblematic building, the main European leaders had gathered, amidst scrutiny, diplomatic handshakes, and whispered conversations. But behind the official veneer of this meeting, the contours of a more complex power struggle were already emerging, blending rivalries, ambitions, and maneuvers for influence. It's 6 p.m. sharp when the doors of City Hall open. On the meticulously rolled-out red carpet, the guests of honor begin to appear, one by one, escorted by their delegations and security guards. Cameras, flashes pop, immortalizing these carefully choreographed moments. The Danish Prime Minister, the central figure of the evening, personally welcomes each of her European counterparts. King Frederick X and Queen Mary, in elegant but understated evening attire, are also present. Their role is discreet, but their mere presence gives the event an undeniable ceremonial weight. The large council chamber, adorned with frescoes symbolizing the unity of the Danish kingdom, vibrates with barely concealed tension. For beyond the prepared speeches and official greetings, the real discussions take place behind the scenes. As an aside, some heads of state address the issue of migration, others the European Green Deal, while still others seem more concerned with the internal political restructuring of their own countries. Tongues are loosening, but always within the limits imposed by diplomatic propriety. The slightest misspoken word can become a bombshell in the hours that follow. Queen Mary, closely observed during this reception, engaged in numerous brief exchanges with the wives of the leaders present. Warm and poised, she embodied the royal modernity so beloved by the European media. The cameras lingered on her gestures, her smile, and her ability to switch naturally from one language to another. Behind her, King Frederick seemed more reserved, but just as attentive to the way alliances were being forged behind the scenes. The glances he exchanged with certain senior German and French officials betrayed a certain gravity. The stakes were high. The Danish presidency would not be symbolic, it came at a pivotal moment in the history of the Union. As the evening progressed, the tension became palpable. Faces relaxed, glasses of white wine were passed around, plates were delicately placed, but no one forgot why they were there. Official conversations gradually gave way to informal asides where people finally dared to broach contentious topics. Ukraine, the rise of extremism, the defense budget, the institutional future of the Union. Some carefully avoid certain topics, while others, on the contrary, provoke them with a wry smile, as if to test the waters. At the central table, an Eastern European president dominates the room, garnering a wealth of anecdotes. Known for his outspokenness, he manages to lighten the mood, but also to slip in a few digs at the French and German positions. Queen Mary, seated nearby, maintains impeccable posture but seems visibly interested in the discussion. She nods slightly when one of the ministers mentions Denmark's humanitarian efforts in the conflict in Ukraine. This is a subtle but deliberate way of signaling the monarchy's commitment to humanitarian causes. In an adjacent room, hand-picked journalists receive snippets of information carefully distilled by the communications teams of the various governments. Here, the narrative is controlled. Nothing is allowed to leak out that could mar the solemnity of the evening. Yet, some secrets are already circulating. Rumor has it that a deep disagreement between the two leaders led to a tense tête-à-tête in a private room. An anonymous diplomatic source even mentions a tense moment between the Spanish representative and his Dutch counterpart over a volatile energy issue. Meanwhile, in the corridors of City Hall, security cameras film relentlessly. Movements are monitored, presence noted, interactions analyzed. Because everything, absolutely everything, could have an impact on future decisions. A pointed glance, an avoided handshake, a prolonged absence in the restroom. Nothing escapes the diplomatic service. Around 10 p.m., music gently rises in the Great Hall. A classical orchestra begins the first notes of a traditional Danish piece, and guests are invited to relax with a nightcap. This is where the most significant moments often occur. As media attention begins to wane, some take the opportunity to make valuable contacts. A Scandinavian minister is spotted slipping a note to her Italian counterpart. A document discreetly changes hands. Alliances are forged, others crumble. But what no one can ignore is the increasingly central role played by the Danish monarchy in the symbolic architecture of the Union. King Frederick and Queen Mary, despite their constitutional neutrality, have become key figures of European soft power. They reassure, unite, and embody a form of stability in an increasingly fragmented Europe. It's no coincidence that the cameras focus on them every time they speak, every time they appear. Their presence is reassuring. Their silence, sometimes, is too. The evening ended shortly before midnight, amidst a chorus of greetings, codified kisses, and barely uttered promises. Everyone returned to their diplomatic cars, escorted through the night by Danish police motorcyclists. Aarhus, a seemingly peaceful city, fell silent again. But the echoes of this evening would long resonate in the corridors of Brussels, Strasbourg, Berlin, Madrid, and Paris. Does this moment of ostensible unity conceal a growing divide between European visions? And how much influence can the Danish monarchy have on the secret balance of power within the Union?